All right, any other questions? Articles. Go ahead, Jay.
I saw one that said land grab.
What was the land grab article?
Is that the eminent domain one?
It was the eminent domain
Oh,
one.
that the government could buy, or they could buy someone's house or private property, but they could only do that with just compensation. And I remember in the article they had like, they used for public use, and that was the word that some of the justices in the Supreme Court said that it gave too much power to the government.
Okay, eminent domain basically says, and this was Jay's nut farm, if you remember. Okay, understand on this. Eminent domain basically says that if the government can actually force you to sell your property for what a reasonable person would pay for it. So they're not going to be thinking about your emotions. They're not going to be thinking about not just your emotions, but they're not going to be thinking about, I don't know, the memories in the house, but they're going to be thinking about the bricks and the glass and the materials that are in it, the location, things like this. Well, they have to use the property once they force you to sell it. They have to use it for a public purpose. And I had mentioned to you in class things like roads or parks, but in Connecticut, they were going to do something different. Do you remember what it was?
Highway.
No, they weren't going to build a highway. They were going to do something else. What did they want to build? Go ahead, Noam.
Wasn't it like building for they're able to make money, like malls or apartments?
So they went into the poor areas of New London, Connecticut, and they said that they were going to build malls. What else?
Like nice housing?
Nice housing, luxury condominiums maybe is another word. What else? Oh, look over that article. You got to be as specific as you can when you answer these short answers. But they decided, how did they rectify this as being a public purpose?
Get more taxes.
Taxes. And then the taxes would provide better police, better fire, better schools, better roads, better all of these things that everybody that was still living in the community would benefit from. Jobs would be created, this kind of a thing. I mean, there were a number of things that ultimately they ended up saying. Did the Supreme Court accept this? Because you really had two arguments. One was my property, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, or life, liberty, and property is something that's supposed to be protected. The other argument was if we can create jobs and raise tax dollars and provide wonderful public services, this is something that we need to do in our community. What did the court ultimately say?
Pass. It was okay.
They did. They said it was okay. And in fact, they said that the taxes and the jobs and all of these services would actually provide a very positive public purpose.
But it was a very split decision.
It was a split decision. Have they ever built these things?
It was like a 5-4 sort of thing.
I think it was even lower. I think a couple of people abstained, but it was really, really close. It was a 1-vote margin. Here's the thing on this. They still haven't built it yet. And they're still fighting. And this article was over a decade ago now. So with that in mind, just because you can win in court, it doesn't mean that you're going to get it. And I believe I had mentioned to y'all the case about the Supreme Court justice. What did they do to the guy that wrote the majority opinion?
They use his own opinion against himself.
Against his what?
His property.
Against his property. What did they want to build? Do you remember? The Lost Liberty Inn. And their argument was if we build this Lost Liberty Inn at your house and knock your house down and eminent domain it, this will create more jobs and tax dollars and whatnot for the community than just leaving your house there. That never ultimately happened either. But you get the idea. That's the argument on these things. And they could go after just about anybody's stuff.
I mean, it said that the people on the life-shattering end will always be normal people with modest means.
Yeah, they're not going to have that much money. They're not going to maybe have that much education. They're not going to have that much ability within the context of the system. And I think I compared that to low-hanging fruit. You go for the easiest places that you can get that you can flip. Maybe there's better land in wealthier areas, but if they're wealthier areas, they're going to be able to fight you better in court too. So that's kind of the thought process. Any others that jump out up here?
General fractions?
What were
Is that
the
the-
fractions?
Is that like the kind of like the 2/3, 3/4?
Yeah, we talked about a lot of fractions this semester. What are the fractions?
To override a
slime.
veto, 2/3 vote in both houses.
Okay, 2/3 vote in both houses in order to be able to override a veto. Anything else?
Passability, majority in both houses.
Yeah, you just need a simple majority in both houses to pass a bill. The bill needs to be passed in identical form with a majority in both houses.
To propose an amendment, you also need 2/3 vote.
Need a 2/3 vote to propose. What do you need to ratify an amendment?
3/4.
You need a 3/4 vote in order to be able to ratify a constitutional amendment. Any other fractions that you can think of?
A slave was considered 2/3, wasn't it? 2/5?
Slaves were considered 3/5. What does that
3/5?
mean, 3/5?
Difference of a person.
5 slaves equals 3/5 of a person for what purpose? What's that? For representation in the House of Representatives, and also for taxation purposes. The South would get more representation, the North would get more Southern tax dollars for the taxes, or for the numbers there. What other piece have you got with fractions? 2/3 overrides a veto, 2/3 proposes an amendment, 3/4 ratifies an amendment. What's 13/13ths?
1.
Okay, that's 1. Yeah, that's probably not the answer I'm going to ask for, though.
All, like, unanimous?
What had to be unanimous?
To pass it? To make an amendment?
Oh, to create the Constitution.
Oh, like just a constitution?
Actually, it did not. It had to be 9/13 to pass the Constitution. So 9/13 is another one, or 9/13 to pass a law under the Articles of Confederation. In order to amend the Articles of Confederation, it had to be 13/13.
Like to amend a law under the.
To amend the Articles of Confederation, it had to be 13/13. It had to be unanimous to be able to amend. So keep that in mind. What else have y'all got? Going back to chapter 1 and just taking a quick look at the articles. And you'll notice in here, miscellaneous porn, there were like 3 or 4 articles that were on there. Not all of them we covered, so make sure that you focus on the ones that we did. So, and you'll know those because it talks about like revenge porn and some of these other things. Social media was Anthony Ellenis, the guy that made the rap lyrics. Make sure that you're good with those because there's an article and a link that dealt with Anthony Ellenis. Going back in here to the first chapter, there were like 4 articles. There was the Catholic school teacher, there was the New Jersey zero tolerance, there was the Harriet Tubman article,
The boy suspended for the gun drive.
and there was the buffer zone article. So, and Starbucks. Any questions about any of these? I think these are basically gone over in the other videos that are already posted in there. But tell the story. And maybe a more important thing to think about, and make sure that you're good with this, is watch the video that my former intern made talking about the Catholic school teacher article and how to answer short answer questions more generally. Let me make sure that I stress this. If you only write 2 or 3 sentences, you're not going to get the points you want. Explain it to me. If 2 or 3 sentences is all you got, if we spent 20 or 30 minutes on something in class, you don't know enough. So tell me the story. Tell me the facts. Tell me the disagreements, because there's usually at least 2 sides, and make sure you tell me who won. And sometimes the articles don't always say who won, but we always went over who won in class.
And you're not going to give us the article on the exam. You're going to expect us to have it memorized.
Yeah, that's pretty
Okay.
typical the way it works. Yeah.
Um,
Any other questions?
Is this video and the other one in this list somewhere?
Everything is going to be in there, but you'll notice going back into course content, you'll see up there review session videos, and there's already 5 that are basically dealing with chapter 1, chapter 2, and the very, very beginning of chapter 3. We just dealt with the end of chapter 3, so that wasn't in the first ones, but that's in there now. And then with chapter 5, political correctness. All we've really done in chapter 5 are some examples of things that you've got to be careful about. So if you remember we talked about banning words on tests, we talked about Little People of America, we talked about the Delaware Department of Transportation. There's a number of Seinfeld videos and Biden quotes that are going to be posted that may not be in there at this point. So make sure that you look back on those, because I think there's like 6 or 7 articles.
What was the outcome for the little people thing? Did we even say that?
On the Little People of America, that's what they advocated, but they didn't get it yet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they didn't get it yet. Go ahead, Jay.
For the vocab, when they ask, like, are we supposed to know the exact definition of the vocab, and then if they ask us where it is in the article we explain?
I would know the definition of the vocab, and then I would also try and have an example for those. And like I said, we covered a lot of those in those other 5 videos for chapters 1 and 2. and just a wee little piece of 3. So with that in mind, you'll see a lot of that there. But if you have any questions about the vocab, we can knock that out here in the next few minutes. Anything you got? Go ahead, Noam.
Can you go over the John Locke? Sorry, I forgot.
What was John Locke?
Father of liberalism.
Okay, I guess. We didn't talk about him in that context, though.
Constitution.
James Madison was the father of the Constitution.
Life,
Bill
liberty,
Gates,
property.
Bill Gates.
John Locke was life, liberty, and property. And you know, there were a couple of quotes, and I showed you this for chapter 1. I'm going to add this for chapter 2 because I know that I pulled in some quotes. But when you get into chapter 1 and you look at articles, you'll notice in there like quote page 10 or quote page 13. These are things that I read off from class. And I'm going to post a couple that deal with John Locke. But John Locke was life, liberty, and property. And basically Locke said, if you remember, that, okay, if we give up in the social contract certain freedoms, that government will provide us with certain protections. And if, in fact, government doesn't provide us with these protections, then guess what? Then we have the right to basically rebel and start over to make some changes. And what does that also kind of sound like? That we talked about, famous document? Not the Confederation thing, before the Confederation thing. Oh, it's going to be a bad exam. What's that? Say what?
Based off life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Yeah, what document is that in?
Civil rights.
Bill of Rights.
Declaration.
Wow, Declaration of Independence. Oh, it's going to be a bad exam. Y'all better go back and look at
English
these.
Bill of Rights?
Yeah, still not talking about that. Declaration of Independence is what we're looking for on this. So make sure that you're
Wait,
comfortable.
so I was right, you were.
That one is a strong one.
So make sure that you're comfortable with these, because I mentioned to you that Thomas Jefferson kind of plagiarized Locke pretty good. And I compared some of the quotes, and the Schoolhouse Rock dealt with the Declaration of Independence. So make sure that you're comfortable with these. Anything else you got?
Social contract.
Yeah, just talked about social contract. It's going to be on there, so that should be good. What else have you got? Go ahead, Jay.
So, when I went to look to like study, there was one on chapter 3, and I can't find the other ones where like it says the page numbers and then like what to know, and it would say like 1, 2, 3, but that was only for 3. I can't find the other ones.
Other ones what?
Like you'd have it would say chapter 3,
Yeah.
and then like vocab or other things, and then the page number.
Yeah.
And at the end of it, it would like say what you should know, and you would like write something.
Yeah.
But that's only for chapter 3. That's there. I mean, I have it on my phone. I can show you later, but.
Yeah, I guess I really don't know what you're asking. All of the outlines have page numbers, and the vocab's all posted, so I'm not really sure where you're going with that. But do you have something that is a vocabulary word that I can answer? Because we can stop. Oh, this is going to be a bad exam, y'all. Please study, because I got a bad feeling. I got a really bad feeling. I mean, usually when the questions aren't good, that's a bad sign for the exam. So I'll go ahead and stop it. I'll get this.